Go live.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in. This is Virtual Coffee with Ben. My name is Ben Blackman, and I'm the Director of Development for Ridge, Royal Innovation Design Group, which is a group of innovation consultants based in St. Petersburg, Florida. Before we get started, I'd like to encourage everybody out there to go to the RIB YouTube page and hit subscribe. You can go to our Facebook page and like and share our content as well. Virtual Coffee with Ben is a web series that focuses on how companies innovate, strategically plan for the future, and how we create a strong culture for employees. Joining me today is Jen Oppelt. Jen is the Director of Operations for Ridge, and she's joined along with Jorn Oppelt. You've seen Jorn before if you've watched the show. He's the Director of Creativity and Innovation for Ridge. He's helping to run the show here. Good morning to both of you guys. Hope you're doing well.
Good morning, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Well, most of our discussions on Virtual Coffee with Ben really focus on how companies are dealing and adjusting to this new world post-pandemic, how they're dealing with adjusting their business strategies and how they're pivoting in their innovation processes in order to stay relevant. What I really wanted to focus on today was a little more behind the scenes stuff, details that are needed to keep businesses moving forward. I know that's not always real sexy to talk about, but it's really, really important, especially for small businesses like Ridge. It's really solid to have operations and administrative teams that are in place, working on payroll, loan applications, internal communications, all that good stuff. We are very, very fortunate to have Jen. She's a rock star when it comes to all that stuff. And I really wanted to get your perspective, Jen, on how your role as Director of Operations has changed due to the pandemic. How have you navigated all the challenges that are faced in the world of PPP loans and SBA loans? And how have you worked with our leadership at Ridge to keep the company moving forward?
Oh, yeah, that's a great topic. I love operations. I love, thinking about how things can run smooth and work best. I've opened businesses, I've closed businesses, I've worked in startups, I've worked in expansion. This is my first time working through a pandemic, so this is a new problem to solve for sure. How my role has changed at Ridge, we started out 2020 with an amazing strategy for an incredible year. We do a strategic planning process. We have our OKRs, our objectives and key results that we work on for the year. And then we break that down into quarterly, monthly, and even weekly goals with a process that we call our 411 process, where we're really deciding what is that one thing that we can work on that's going to make the biggest impact. So I started off 2020 with my one thing was to expand the team with ZOC. And I think you guys have talked about ZOC on the show before, but that is our internal term for zone of certainty, which means that I was going to expand the team with everybody being really certain about what their roles were and what they needed to do to be successful. And that included hiring. We were going to nearly double our team this year. That was our initial plan setting out at the beginning of 2020. So a lot of hiring, a lot of infrastructure building, employee manuals that we hadn't needed before, and policies and procedures and training manuals, and just a lot of things that we were set out to build at the beginning of the year. And that quickly shifted when the coronavirus hit, and we realized that we would not be hiring as our clients were dealing with the virus, and our on-site events, our live events were being canceled, and a lot of things were coming down. We had to switch gears. So we quickly strategized again. And my now one thing is to support the team infrastructure through uncertainty. So I started out with really committing to certainty, and now it's basically riding the waves and creating the infrastructure through uncertainty. And so that's been kind of how things have shifted for me personally in my role in the company. I know you had some other parts of the questions, but maybe I'll kind of pause there and see if you want to unpack that any further.
Yeah, I'm just curious kind of how you went about securing loans and things like that. I know it was a little bit of a free for all for a lot of businesses, not just small businesses, but all businesses fighting for PPP loans, SBA loans. What was that process like? Did you know a lot about those sort of things, or did you have to research them? Do you have any advice for companies that are still in that process, haven't gotten loans yet?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, finding lending and funds, that wasn't a big part of my experience in the past, although things like lengthy applications for things certainly are. I've gone through processes becoming like a certified small business owner and things like that that require a lot of detail. Um, and so the PPP and the different disaster loans out there, we have a really great support system of professionals that we work with, our employment attorney, our accountant, even our bankers. We bank at a couple different banks. And those were really critical in getting us support, as well as some people in our circle. Matt, that you had on last time, he was great in helping us find resources, and some other mentors and colleagues that we work with. We're all kind of passing things our way. As well as I would scan the news daily and go, directly to the sites that I was being given, like the SBA site and, um, the Florida Economic Development site, and things that I knew were viable sources, and reading through, just lots and lots of reading through documents. But I feel like the most important was actually the people who'd gone through it before us. We were not approved in that first round of the PPP loans with our initial application. We went with our larger bank on that one, and through some things that we had heard, some stories that were told, we found that people were having better luck with smaller banks. And we happen to have a second account at a smaller local bank, and I'm really glad for that. So it is kind of good. That's a thing that, like, if you could like tell yourself, if you could talk to yourself from the future, and go back, it would be like, don't necessarily have all your eggs in one basket. Like, it's good to have a couple different banking relationships, that when things happen, you're able to reach out, because if you don't have those relationships, it does make it harder, but not impossible. So, we were able on the second round of funding to get an application processed very quickly and much more smoothly with a smaller bank, and actually get those funds. The other thing just to note on the PPP, though, if I had to give anybody any advice who maybe hasn't received it yet or is looking to hopefully get that loan, is there is a lot to be aware of on how to use those funds, and how to use them in a way that the loan is forgiven. So essentially, you just need to be really well versed on that, whether your banker is giving you those documents to read through. Hopefully they're answering questions for you, or you have other experts. Again, our employment attorney has been very, very valuable through this process. But there's a clock that starts as soon as that loan is funded of 8 weeks. Literally, you don't know the day that it's going to hit your bank. The funds hit your bank, and then you've got 8 weeks to use them correctly. So, you need to have a plan for how to use those funds, and how you're gonna, if you've had layoffs, for example, getting those people back on board, because if those payrolls were included, in your loan application, you really need to get that amount of payroll back up and paid again. So, of course, there's a lot of ways you can go about doing that, but having a good strategy session, and having a plan moving forward. I mean, we have a 13-week cash flow that we use, and I created one especially for that loan, to make sure I know exactly how we're going to spend that money from day one.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for the great advice for people that are just joining. This is Jen Oppelt. She's the Director of Operations for Ridge. She's joining me along with Jordan Oppelt, Director of Creativity and Innovation. And this is Virtual Coffee with Ben. If you like what you're seeing, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the like and share button on the Facebook page. We're typically talking about how companies strategically plan for the future and innovate. Today, we're talking a lot about operations and the difficult challenges that companies are facing in light of the pandemic. Jen was just talking about SBA and PPP loans and giving some great advice about having a good employment attorney and perhaps looking at smaller community banks instead of the large banks. We're very fortunate to have good banking partners that have helped us along the way. Jen, a topic that has been frequently discussed now is the reopening of the economy, reopening of businesses. Do you have any advice for companies that are looking to reopen but might have concerns about safety for their employees? They want to make sure that they're creating a safe and comfortable environment that everybody can get behind. How do you see navigating that challenge for Ridge? And do you have any advice for other companies that are looking at kind of reopening?
Mhm. So for Ridge, I mean, I have to say we're just really lucky and that we were already really well versed on working remotely, virtually. We did we did just sign a lease on an office in January of 2020 with our team expansion goals. We wanted a nice place for us all to get together and collaborate. But we never intended that to be a office that housed everybody to work, a 40-hour work week in the office. That was never the intention for that space. We always knew that we would do a combination of work at home, work virtually, get together for meetings. So thankfully for us, we don't face a large challenge with a workforce that we're trying to get back into a building. Or a public facing space where we need to consider public health and safety. So ours is a pretty simple, and in that respect, my job is very easy on that end. It's just a matter of communication and really planning a lot of well-intentioned meetings. Our meeting flow has been essential, I think, through this process. We've changed it several times. Our meeting flow that we had at the beginning of 2020 changed once we all went home, and then it's changed again through a few different iterations. But so far as your restaurant owners, your retail owners, your salons, and whatnot that are opening now, as well as much larger operations. The one thing that I would suggest if it were me is that I would want to try to follow experts in your industry, however you're connecting with them, whether it's in a more you're following people on LinkedIn and kind of seeing what they're doing. States who have opened up maybe a little before us, or businesses that open up a little bit before you in your same industry, kind of following those trends and seeing what they're doing, what ideas are coming up. But I think even a little bit more relevant, I would love to see this happening. I'm not sure how much it is happening, but if businesses in certain industries locally would connect, of course, safely via Zoom or other social video platform for like a collaborative session and share ideas. If restaurant owners could get together and say what's working for them, how they plan on opening, that might spark some ideas. And as well as I think that it would create a sense of solidarity. If they could, maybe do things and have some similar standards, that are being rolled out. And I know that, some city governments are really good about giving resources for that type of thing too. The other thing I would say is making a strategic plan, whether that's something you are able to do on your own, you've done them before, or you need to get some outside help for that, making a plan, if you can imagine 90 days out, that's hard to do right now. You usually start with a 90-day plan in these type of situations. That may be challenging. If you can't think 90 days out, at least think a month out, a week out at a time, and then pivot, constantly revisiting that plan and pivoting as the needs change, because they will right now. And then communication is the last one that I would say on that, to your team, to your customers, constant, way more communication than you would think you need. Team members especially need to hear your voice in a lot of instances. An email is not enough. An email can be read and interpreted so many different ways. The emotion isn't conveyed. So we like to hop on Zoom calls with our team when we're rolling out important information. Or even making a quick phone call and just, giving a heads up. So a lot of communication.
On that note, I'd like to bring Jorn into the conversation. So Jorn, your role is typically focusing on the innovation work that we're doing, but when it comes to the internal communications, the strategic plans, the meeting schedule, things like that, all of those streamlined processes how does that make your job easier as someone who's not typically focused on those sort of things?
Um, it's all the difference. I mean, somebody like me who um, is creative, and as far as on the disc profile is needs, I'm a high I, so I need that interaction and influence, and I need people, and I need to be, I'm motivated by relationship and all of that. I don't have a lot of attention to detail when it comes to the day to day and to the grind and to keeping accountable to a tracking system or a process or a platform or whatever, right? I'm scribbling on a napkin, or I'm typing in the notes app, or I'm starting a Google Doc, and for me a lot of those things are never in one place. So having those systems and that structure, it makes all the difference, whether it's using Slack now for the internal comms, or whether we're using monday.com, which Jen has been a champion of now for over a year. I think now we've been using that, and that's made all the difference for me. And in the beginning, I was observing and saying, okay, everybody else is using Monday, and that's great for them. And well, maybe I'll go in once a week and I'll look at things, and oh, here's something that's been assigned to me. I did that already. I'll mark that done. And I was a very passive user of the project management. But now, at this point, a year in, it's vital. There's so many things that would fall through the cracks, and as Jen's talking about this accelerated cycle of iteration and communication and product and process, this whole thing, like, that becomes so much more important to have those systems and those processes in place. And yeah, like I said, Jen has really been the champion of those for us internally. I couldn't do my job without it. And it's just been really great. I will say about the zone of certainty, this is something that we may have talked about on this series before. I know we've talked about it elsewhere publicly, but that whole concept came from throwing our org chart out the window. We've got this Venn diagram that we use and share with clients and show them how we developed ours. And it really started with us developing our own personas through this persona mapping process. Michelle as the prismatic magic maker, me as the sage commander, teacher of teachers. Jennifer's persona is the mystical web weaver of nurturing support, and these personas kind of overlapping. And we looked at that and said, okay, well, between Michelle and I, that's where our product development happens, right? Between Michelle and Jennifer, that's where the business development is happening. And between Jennifer and I, that's where the systems development is happening. And then in the middle of that Venn diagram, we said if we're all communicating, over communicating, clearly communicating, we're all painting done for each other, showing up, being present, being honest, being aware, what's happening then when we're firing on all pistons, right? We create that magical zone of certainty that Jen talked about. And then it's like, at all your stand-ups and all your powwows and all your meetings, check in around that. Like this week, I felt out of Zoc when this happened, right? We missed this communication, or there was some crossed wires here, or I just fell down on whatever, right? Owning those mistakes, being honest with one another about, when things aren't painted done, what could be done differently. And then when were you in Zoc, taking an inventory of like, this felt really good. This made me feel like this filled my sails this week and got me powering through. That inventory with your check-ins, I think, is really important. And so I think that the fact that we looked at what the structures we had, and we're like, let's just throw this whole hierarchy thing out and then re-envision what that might look like. That opened us up to a form of communication and a path to certainty that I think is vital. And I don't think people are going to, sometimes that hierarchy in times of crisis is all you have to hold on to. So I would say don't be afraid to just kind of peel your fingers off of it and let it go and see what happens, right? You reimagine what the business can be during this time, and I think it'll make all the difference.
Yeah, it certainly has made a great difference. And I can tell you that I never feel more in Zoc than when I'm with Jorn and Jen Oppelt. It's all the time we have for today, but I want to thank you both again so much for joining me. Really valuable insights that I hope some people can take and apply to their businesses. If you're interested in Ridge and what we're doing to help companies through the pandemic and to help them innovate and strategically plan for the future, please visit us at ridge.com. That's RIDG.com. And again, feel free to go to our YouTube channel, subscribe. There'll be more videos and content like this. Go to our Facebook page, and we hope to see you next time. Thanks and take care.
Thanks, Ben.